Hello everyone, my name is Dan and I make competitive Warhammer 40k content. Today we're going to be talking about 5 kind of weird tactics that you may not have known you can do in Warhammer 40k. The tactics we're going to be going over are bubble wrapping, interweaving units, body blocking, being an objective goalie, and then canceling pylons. I hope you enjoy the video. So the first tactic we're going to be talking about is the idea of bubble wrapping, and basically it boils down to using a cheap unit that you put in front of another unit that you want to protect. And there's various distances you can kind of put this buffer or bubble wrapping unit in front of your more important unit. So in this example, we're going to be the blue players, and our chief chaff unit is the light blue circles, and the important unit is the dark blue circles. And what we can see here on this graphic is that we've put 3 inches from the front of our blue units to the front of the light blue units. And what that does is that gives us a distance between the front of the red unit and the front of the dark blue unit of 12.1 inches. And this is actually a very important number for 2 different reasons. The first of which is that many flamers have a 12-inch range. So essentially by putting your light blue unit buffer 3 inches ahead of your dark blue buffer, you ensure that nobody can come out of deep strike with their flamers and shoot your dark blue unit. Additionally, if those deep strike units have a rapid fire gun of 24 inches, then you're also putting them outside of that rapid fire range. Now, if you were worried about red deep striking in a rapid fire gun with 30 inches, you could actually put your light blue units 6 inches ahead of your dark blue units, and that would prevent those 30-inch guns from being able to use their rapid fire capability. So putting chaff units 3 inches in front of your dark blue units will shut off a multitude of things. So if you're worried about your opponent's deep strike coming out and hurting you, these bubble wrappings and screens are very important. Additionally, this 3-inch barrier also prevents the red units from being able to charge the dark blue units even if the light blue units die in the shooting phase, because the red and the dark blue are more than 12 inches away, and even if you could theoretically go farther than 12 inches, you are not allowed to declare a charge against anything that is over 12 inches. Now, if we're worried about red charging our light blue unit and then consolidating into our dark blue unit, what we can do is put 4.1 inches between light blue and dark blue. Because consolidating is usually 3 inches and the engagement range is always 1 inch, this keeps your dark blue units always outside of the engagement range of red. Now, of course, if your opponent has an ability that allows them to consolidate 6 inches, then you actually want to increase this to 6.1. And I have one more final example of bubble wrapping. This is something that you actually do in your movement phase as blue. So essentially what you would do is you would move up your light blue units to be just over 1 inch away from the red units. So that's important because you don't want to get in combat with red. And then what you're going to do is you're going to put slightly more than 11 inches from the front of the light blue and the front of the dark blue. Assuming that red can't come any closer to you, you can imagine these lines are either infinitely long or there's blocking terrain on either side or what have you. But the point is, if red shoots and kills all of the light blue units off in his shooting phase, he had already had to have done his movement phase, and therefore he wasn't able to get closer than those 12.1 inches, or 12.2 in this case, between red and dark blue. So by putting up this light blue buffer unit so close to red, you actually move block them and make it once more an ineligible charge between red and dark blue. So what I really encourage you to do is think about how you can use these buffer units to bubble wrap your army in order to prevent deep strike charges, deep strike rapid fires or flamer shots, or even prevent charges entirely. Okay, this next one's going to be a little bit wonky and is also going to have to rely on some geometry. So in this example, I want you to imagine, once again, we have 2 units, red and blue. Now, red wants to charge our units, but he only wants to charge 1 at a time. His unit is capable of killing 1 of our full units, but if he were to charge both of them, he would kill half and then get swung back, and the other half would essentially be able to attack him. So red wants to avoid that. But what we've carefully done is actually interspersed our models between each other. We can do this fairly easily because the size of a model is generally slightly over 1 inch and your coherency is 2 inches. But first, to understand why we're doing this interweaving of units, we have to first look at an example of what the engagement ranges look around these units when we're zoomed in. Here we have kind of a segment of that chain. So we have the engagement range of our light blue units drawn as circles, as well as the engagement range of our dark blue units. So what you can see is that red has a small sliver of space where they are able to put their model where they are engagement range of dark blue, but not in engagement range of light blue. So you see this and may think, oh, well, this is trivial. Red can still get in combat with dark blue. And it's true that red can, but he actually gives up the attacks of his back rank. And the reason why is because engagement range for units in the back rank have to be within half an inch of a model that is also within half an inch of the model they're attacking. And because of those circles, you actually do not get within half an inch of dark blue with your red model. So you can see that if red charges and only wants to charge the dark blue models, he's actually only able to get 5 guys in combat. So that means if red wants to get the full amount of attacks and have his back rank be within half an inch of a model that is also within half an inch of the enemy they're attacking, then red has to move their front line closer. But red can only get in the engagement zone of light blue if they also declare light blue as a charge target. And if they declare him as a charge target, then light blue gets to attack back. So in this scenario, essentially you give red 2 options. Either only charge and attack with half of your models, or be forced to charge both of my units. You know, I recently saw the spoilers for the new Space Marine 2 game, but I wanted to show you a Easter egg I saw in the 2011 version of Space Marine. So you can see here the main protagonist, Titus, is actually attacking an orc with a Thunderhammer, and this is actually an allusion to you smashing the like button on this video, very ahead of their time. The next tactic I want to talk about is body blocking. I actually talked a little bit about this in my deployment video, which I think was one of the better videos I've made. So if you are curious on deployment tips, I highly suggest you check that. So in this tip, we're going to be talking about how blue can kind of take advantage of the ruin he's in, as well as some rules in Warhammer 40k. So in this scenario, red wants to charge blue, but blue is going to make that as hard as he possibly can. So this takes advantage of a couple of facts. The first of which is that 1 inch is 25.4 millimeters. And the smallest base you can have in Warhammer 40k is 25 millimeters. Additionally, the engagement range of a unit is 1 inch. In Warhammer 40k, your model has to be able to fit in the location that you want to put them. What that means is you can't have a model that is sitting in between a wall. He either has to be on one side or the other. Can't be just existing, kind of zoning through and phasing through the wall. What that means is that blue can set up their models in such a way that does not allow a red model to end their movement phase inside the ruin with blue. But if they stand on the other side of the ruin, then they would be more than 1 inch away from blue and would not be able to attack. Now there are tags on terrain that allows you to attack 2 inches, but area to area ruins don't actually have that tag. So this tactic works with any size base all the way down to a 25 millimeter base. So as long as the ruin wall is thicker than 0.4 millimeters, this tactic will always work no matter what size base your opponent has. And for context, 0.4 millimeters is roughly 4 sheets of paper. Even MDF terrain cardboard, which is already very thin, is thicker than 0.4 millimeters. And of course, this isn't an impervious strategy because red can simply charge around. So essentially what you're doing is you're increasing the range of the charge that red has to do. They can't simply just go to the edge of the ruin, and they can't just go into the ruin. Instead, they have to charge around the ruin to tag blue. And that can greatly reduce the amount of guys that they can get into combat. The next topic we're going to be talking about is being a goalie on an objective. What I mean by this is preventing a unit from standing on the objective and stealing it from you. So a couple key things to know is that an objective is a 40 millimeter base. You can control an objective or be considered to be on it as long as you're within 3 inches of the base. You don't need to be wholly within, you can just be towing in. So one really sneaky thing people can do with objectives is, let's say you have a bunch of troops on the objective, but they don't have OBSEC, and your opponent just walks on with OBSEC units. and takes the objective away from you without ever having to fire a shot. Well, you want to be able to put yourself in a position where you can punish the opponent for standing on the objective, and we can do that with heroic interventions. So every character can heroically intervene, and they're all a minimum of 3 inches. There are many other factions that have access to 6-inch heroic interventions, but we can make a 3-inch heroic intervention work. So if you imagine a 40mm character on an objective who's perfectly in the middle of the objective, then there is nowhere on the objective that is not within 3 inches. And because of that, if your opponent puts any unit with OBSEC, for example, and tries to steal the objective for you, they are always going to inherently open themselves up to be heroically intervened. They cannot get on the objective without getting punished. Now, if you're a 30mm base with heroic intervention, then your opponent can get their toe in and take the objective from you. So what you have to do in this case is actually put 3 models that are 30mm bases, or 32mm bases that can heroically intervene. So something like Sanguinary Guard, with just 3 Sanguinary Guard models, you can ensure that the opponent either has to kill your Sanguinary Guard models or get within range of your heroic intervention strat. Also, I wanted to talk about a myth I hear a lot about. I've heard people say multiple times that you can put a knight on an objective and prevent anybody from standing on it because of the size of their base, and that's actually just not true. So a knight model is 170 by 110 millimeters, but the diameter of these objectives with the base and then the 3 inches on either side is actually closer to 178. So what that means is that your knight cannot block with their body the entire objective. Now they do have a 1-inch engagement zone around them, and if your opponent doesn't want to get smashed by a knight, they would have to stay slightly outside of that 1 inch. But there are still locations on the objective where your opponent could put their models and essentially contest the objective without ever getting in combat with your knight. Now what you can do is move your knight slightly to the top of the objective and only have the open areas in the back, which would cause your opponent to have to move a lot farther or get in combat with your knight. So myth busted, but there is some cool strategies you can do with a knight on an objective. So the final tactic I wanted to talk about is Pylon Cancelling. And so in this example, we kind of have 2 units against 2 units. So in this example, red is going to charge blue a little bit off to the side with their light red models, and they're going to charge the light blue models with their dark red models. So now red has to be worried here, because red charged, they get to attack first. So what our opponent could do is take light red and attack dark blue. And let's say they'd be able to kill them. What that would do is that would open up light blue to be able to interrupt and then attack the dark red models before they got to activate. So red kind of opens themselves up here to be hit pretty hard by a combat interrupt. And in this scenario, let's pretend that red wants to keep the light red models alive more than the dark red models. So the best option for red here is to start with the dark red models and kill the light blue models. And the reason why he's doing this is actually to protect the light red models from blue. And that seems really odd right now, but please follow along and it'll make sense. So dark red goes, kills a bunch of blue's models, and then what he's going to do is he's going to pile in to get in base to base with the dark blue models. Now blue has the option to combat interrupt. So the first option is to combat interrupt with the light blue models, which is not a good play at all because they're half dead. And the other option is to combat interrupt with the dark blue models like he was planning before. What blue would love to do is be able to combat interrupt and move the dark blue models up and kill all the light red models before they get to attack. But what red has done, which is very smart, is he's actually base to base his models with the dark blue models. Now if blue were to combat interrupt, the first thing he would do is pile in. So you only get an opportunity to pile in if you're not in base to base with an enemy already. You can also only move closer to the closest enemy model. So if dark blue combat interrupts, he would not be able to take those bottom 3 blue models on the left, push them 3 inches to the right, and put all his attacks on red. In fact, there's probably only going to get 2 out of the 5 models to be able to attack light red's models. This essentially makes his combat interrupt useless. So blue doesn't combat interrupt and is very sad and gets cleaned up by light red. So if you're worried about getting punished by combat interrupt by your opponent, what I highly recommend you do is try to base your opponent's models that would activate and essentially prevent them from piling in to get their attacks on the unit you want to survive. So that was 5 weird tricks in Warhammer 40k. I hope you enjoyed the video, and I hope you check out some of my other ones. Have a wonderful day.